Greetings, fellow gorehounds, and welcome back to a Blood Splattered vlog. I'm the Horror Guru, and today I'm going to be talking about Fear Street 1994, which is the latest Netflix original horror movie, and is actually the first of a trilogy of films that I plan on covering on this channel over the course of this month. Now, for those of you who don't know, Fear Street 1994, as well as the rest of the Fear Street trilogy, are adaptations of the R.L. Stine Fear Street books, which were basically books he wrote for a slightly older audience than his Goosebumps books, and were essentially the young adult alternative. Now, full disclosure, I never actually read the Fear Street books myself, so I can't say whether or not this movie, or any of the other Fear Street movies that are coming out later this month, are accurate to the books they're adapting, but I can talk about the movies as they are, as well as how I felt about them, so that's what I'm gonna do.
Let's do this!
Which begs the question, what exactly is Fear Street 1994 as a movie? Well, it turns out it's actually a lot of things, and almost all of those things are 100% within my wheelhouse. Because Fear Street 1994 is not only a love letter to the 1990s, and filled to the brim with a pretty awesome 1990s era soundtrack, it's also a fast-paced slasher movie that pays homage to past slasher movies. For example, the opening scene of this movie is like something right out of the Scream movies, but I'll get more into that when we get to the spoilers. So stay tuned, folks! And it's also an extremely fast-paced film filled to the brim with a lot of funny moments, to the point where you could almost argue that it's low-key a horror comedy. And all those elements are complementing a movie which, at the center of it, at its core, is really a lesbian romance, for lack of a better term for it. And I say lack of a better term because one of the characters is technically bi and not just a lesbian, but the movie is definitely about the woman plus woman relationship, so whatever you want to call that, that's what this movie is essentially about at its core. So on top of being an extremely fun and gory slasher movie, it also features the type of LGBT representation that more movies should really have, which definitely takes a movie that's already pretty damn good and elevates it to greatness. Now, with all that being said, I do have some criticisms of the movie, but they are relatively minor in the grand scheme of things. My first criticism is, I feel like the movie tried a little too hard with some of its 90s nostalgia-ness. Like, a great example of this is there's a scene in the movie, like really early on when we're introduced to the teens in their high school, and like the movie transitions from one 90s song to another like 4 different times in the span of 2 minutes, which just felt like a little much, just at least to me it did. Now, don't get me wrong, I definitely loved and recognized all the songs, and they 100% hit me in the nostalgic Philly feels, but I do feel like 3 or 4 songs in the span of 2 minutes is just a little bit much. I'm just saying, when you're already hitting a home run, you don't really need to try that hard. And my second criticism of the movie really ties back into my first criticism, and that's that this movie is extremely fast-paced, and at times it felt like it just needed a little bit more time to breathe. Like it could have slowed down once or twice just to like have some more quiet moments. But like, that being said, it's not like this was like a Michael Bay movie and I was overloaded too much throughout it. I just felt like, you know, at times it could have had a pacing of something more like, you know, Freaky, which is definitely the kind of movie it was going for. And my third and final criticism of the movie is I just wanted a slightly bigger body count. Like, the kills we get in this movie are fucking top notch, don't get me wrong. I will take quality over quantity any goddamn day. But I do feel like there was like enough side characters that we could have seen more people die. Though I do recognize that given the way this plot goes, that they needed more people to stay alive, because again, this is part of a trilogy of movies that are coming out this month, so, you know, we're gonna see more people die as these movies go on, but I did kind of feel like I just wanted to see, like, just a couple more extra deaths. I don't even care if you introduced, like, random side characters like they do at one point in the movie and just let them die. Like, that would have been cool with me, too. I'm a gorehound. What can I say? I love fucking gore, and I love watching people die in slasher movies, so I just wanted more of that. Though, that being said, it does appear that the next one, the one set in the 70s, is, probably gonna solve that problem, so, looking forward to that. Anyway, my fellow gorehounds, Fear Street 1994 is one of the must-see horror movies of the summer, especially if you're a 90s kid and a gorehound, because it will satisfy those two desires pretty damn well, even if you're like me and kind of wished more people died. And hey, even if you end up not liking this movie, the one thing I can guarantee is that you're gonna love the fuck out of this goddamn soundtrack. It even included two of my favorite 90s metal songs, Fear of the Dark by Iron Maiden and More Human Than Human by White Zombie. So any movie that has those two songs in it 100% gets 2 thumbs up from me. And with all that said, my fellow gorehounds, if anything I've said today has enticed you to check out Fear Street 1994 for yourself, then you can check it out over on Netflix because, again, it's a Netflix original movie. So if you're not already subscribed, then subscribe to Netflix and watch it there. And with that all said, my fellow gorehounds, let us move on to the spoilers. Alright, so right away this movie opens up with one of the greatest slasher homages I've seen since Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Because basically, right off the bat, we're introduced to the most famous actress in the movie, Maya Hawke, who, for those of you who don't know, is Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke's daughter, and is also famous for having been in Stranger Things. So we have the most famous actress in the movie in this scene set in a mall, in which she's closing down a shop, like, as the mall is closing, and she is essentially stalked and killed by a slasher killer in this skull mask. And the way the slasher killer stalks and kills her is very reminiscent to the opening scene of Scream, which featured Drew Barrymore, the most famous actress in that movie at the time, being killed off in the very opening scene in a slasher scene, which involved a slasher stalking and killing her, not in a mall but in her house, but both movies featured the killer calling and stalking them on the phone. Calling and stalking them? No, calling and taunting them is what I meant. And this homage gets to the point where you literally get a shot-for-shot recreation right down to the slow motion of the scene in which Drew Barrymore gets stabbed by the killer. Except in this case, instead of Ghostface, it's now Skullface. And so after this opening scene, we find out that our movie is set in this town called Shadyside, which has a sister town named Sunnyside, with Shadyside being the murder capital of the world as well as the poor side of town, and Sunnyside being the rich people and privileged side of town. It's kind of got a small town version of the dichotomy between Oakland and San Francisco, but like again, transposed to like a small town. And if any of you are familiar with the Bay Area, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But in this case, we find out very quickly that there are rumors around town that the reason why Shadyside is the murder capital of the world is because of this witch that was killed in this town years ago and is now seeking revenge on the town by constantly possessing people and making them commit murders. With, of course, this Skullface kid being the most latest possession. Now, all of this is just the background information of the movie. The core plot of this movie involves a character named Dina, who lives in Shadyside and has a ex-girlfriend who moved to Sunnyside and is kind of like in the closet. She's kind of hiding the fact that she likes women, and as a result of this has been dating this jock dude and trying to pretend to be like, you know, Little Miss Perfect rich girl. But she's really closeted, and that's very obvious, like one of her core conflicts, and she's kind of like trying to run away from this part of herself, which is partially why she decided to move to Sunnyside when her parents got divorced. But anyway, the core conflict of this movie is that girl, the one that moved to Sunnyside, Sam, she comes to Shadyside because of reasons that are plot related, and accidentally ends up disturbing the remains of the witch that haunts the town. And as a result of this, all of the slasher killers that this witch has possessed over the decades rise from the dead and come after her, as well as Dina and Dina's friends, who are basically trying to save Sam from being killed by these slasher killers. And that's basically, you know, what happens in the movie. And I have two things I really want to mention here, with the first thing being, I love all of these characters. Dina and Sam are fucking precious as a couple, and I really enjoyed watching their journey from kind of like having been broken up and one of them being closeted to kind of discovering over the course of the movie that no, like Sam really does love Dina, and she is actually kind of closeted and has been running from this part of herself, and Dina kind of admitting that she doesn't hate Sam or even hate anybody in this case. She's just mad that her girlfriend left, and her girlfriend wants to stay in the closet and wants their relationship to be kept a secret, and this upsets her. And I really thought that was like, that I really loved watching that. That's not the kind of relationship you see in a slasher movie, or most movies, to be honest. It's very unique, and I appreciated that. More than that, I also liked their friends. Kate and Simon are like two of the MVPs of the movie, as well as Dina's little brother Josh. These three characters basically, like, they make the movie because they're so goddamn fun, and their interactions with one another are great. Like, there's this one joke later on in the movie, like when they're reaching the climax and they're going to confront all the slasher killers, where they all pretty much think they're about to die. So you have Dina and Samantha who start, they start making out and, getting busy. And then you have Kate, who over the course of the movie develops a relationship with Dina's brother, Josh, and they end up making out in the bathroom. Maybe doing more, but it's all implied. You don't really get to see it. And they all come out, and like their friend Simon looks at them all and like, oh man, did you all go to Pound Town? Me too, with the implication being that he masturbated. And that was one of the funniest goddamn jokes I've seen in a horror movie all fucking year. And I say that having seen some really good horror comedies lately. Like, I'm going to be doing a vlog with Jack on The Werewolves Within, which is probably the best overall horror comedy I've seen so far this year. And even with that being the best horror comedy I've seen all this year, that joke, the Pound Town joke, was probably my favorite joke just overall for the year. That was just perfect. And the second thing I really wanted to mention here is I really love this conceit of this witch bringing back all these slasher killers from every decade, because it allowed the movie to basically homage various previous slasher movies. Like, there's one slasher killer that is clearly like a summer camp killer who's like this guy in flannel with an axe, and he 100% felt like a Jason Voorhees-esque killer. And of course, the skull-face killer 100% felt like a 90s style slasher killer, like, your Screams and your I Know What You Did Last Summers and Urban Legends and movies like that. Anyway, I just needed to highlight those two things while we're in the spoiler section, because I love all of those elements of this movie, and I think it's really what makes this movie so goddamn fun. These characters, this soundtrack, and all the slasher homages, as well as the fucked up kills. There's actually two kills in particular, which we're in the spoiler section, so I'm gonna spoil the movie. If you do not want me to spoil some of the biggest elements of the last act of this movie, then stop right here, pause, go watch Fear Street 1994 on Netflix, come back, and then continue this vlog from this point forward. Okay, so later on in this movie, during the final climax, when they're basically confronting all the slasher killers, and they're kind of doing their last hurrah of trying to save this girl Samantha, which it felt very much like the ending of It Follows, where it's kind of futile, but they're trying anyway. What I really liked about this scene is that they make it very clear during this sequence that anyone is game. And they do this by killing two of the characters that thus far felt like they were going to survive to the end of the movie, and that's Kate and Simon, two of the friends, two of the most hilarious friends. And the Kate death is probably the most shocking and horrifying death in the entire movie, and probably the best kill overall. It's this great fucking thing where they put her through this bread slicer, so her head comes out in like these little fucking sliced pieces, and it's fucking horrifying. So the gorehound in me was watching that scene going like, oh man, gnarly, that's a great effect. Oh man, that's a classic slasher kill right there. But the movie kind of did this amazing thing where, unlike a lot of slasher movies, I gave a shit about Kate. I was emotionally invested in Kate and her relationship with Josh, as well as her overall just kind of situation. So when she died, I audibly gasped. I did not expect her to die, and when she died, it hit me emotionally. I actually got sad. Not sad in a bad way where I was mad at the movie or anything, sad in a good way. The movie made me feel something, and it was exactly what it wanted me to feel, and I fucking love that. And so when the fucking Camp Crystal Lake style killer shows up later and fucking kills Simon with an axe to the fucking head, that was just like, oh fuck. It didn't hit me quite as much as the Kate one did, but it still fucking hit me because that character was hilarious and was one of the greatest comic relief elements of the movie. Now, I'm used to comic relief characters dying in slasher movies, but I'm not used to their deaths hitting me in the same way they did in this movie. Like, cause Jesus Christ, like, I felt like I was gonna cry for a minute. Like, it really got me. So anyway, the finale of this movie happens, and they basically discover that if they kill Sam, if they have her die, then the witch's curse should end, theoretically. But what ends up happening is they end up, like, drowning her and then bringing her back to life, which you're like, okay, well, I mean, that's a loophole that might solve the situation, but we quickly discover by the twist ending, which if you're an R.L. Stine fan, you know there's always the twist ending. Rarely do these stories end happily. And the twist ending happens, and basically the witch now possesses Samantha and turns her into the newest slasher killer. And this is basically leads into the cliffhanger that's going to lead into the next movie, Fear Street 1978, in which we're going to go into the history of the slasher kills that have happened throughout this town. Basically, the characters are going to be going around figuring out what the history of this town and this witch is, and trying to find a way to save their friend Samantha, as well as save their own lives, because at this point, they're now sending slasher killers after them that are in the shape of their friends. That's pretty fucked up. So it ends with a cliffhanger, as well as a satisfying end to the overall story of that movie. So I'm looking forward to Fear Street 1978. I'm excited as fuck. I can't wait for the third one too, Fear Street 1966 or 1666, which is the one about the actual witch, which is oh man, I can't wait to see what she's all about. But anyway, this movie's fun. The next movie looks like it's going to be doing for the 70s what this movie did for the 90s, so I'm all down for that. I can't wait for the classic rock 70s soundtrack that's going to be hitting me, and all the homages to 70s horror movies that I just know that movie's going to be filled to the brim with, because 1978, like it turns out, based on the teaser, is going to be set in a summer camp. So 100% we're going Friday the 13th with the next movie, and I can't fucking wait. I also liked all the Easter eggs in this movie to what's obviously going to come up in the next movies, because there's this sheriff character who goes around and like is investigating everything that's happening, and he leaves this one note that says that, oh shit, it's happening again for someone. And so you get obviously this sheriff is probably going to be a younger character in 1978, and this is happening again is most likely going to be a reference to whatever he goes through in that movie. So I'm really interested in seeing what Sheriff when he was a kid, or at least a teenager, was like. And I'm just kind of rambling now. If you can't tell, I'm fanboying the hell over this movie because it hit me in all the good feels. It's got the 90s nostalgia, the badass soundtrack, the slasher movie homages. It's gory, it's funny, it's got characters I love. It did great LGBT representation. What more could you ask for? Like, no matter what complaints I had throughout the movie, like little nitpicks that could have like made the movie a little bit better, at the end of the day, this movie is just fun as hell, and I think you should all check it out. And with that all said, my fellow Gorehounds, I'm going to cut my rambling off here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so that you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. Don't forget to check out my Patreon page, and remember, if you decide to go the Patreon route, even $1 a month can go a long way. And if you made it this far into the vlog, then in the comments below, put #BreadSlicer. That's right, #BreadSlicer. If you made it this far into the vlog so that I know you watched this vlog all the way through. And with that said, my fellow Gorehounds, I got some more vlogs to record with Jack. I got some more movies to watch. I got a huge backlog of movies to watch. And I've got a new Blood Splattered Cinema that I've been trying to edit for the last few months, and I really need to get it done. So I got my work cut out for me, and I'm going to go work on it. So peace out, my fellow Gorehounds, and I'll catch y'all later.